This episode is sponsored by the HMD Rosetta EQ. Use the code AudioNerds for $10 off at the helpmedevon.com store right now. Hurry. Now, on to your episode.
Leslie Braithwaite, I mean.
Oh,
Leslie Braithwaite was fire. I love that guy.
We caught that on a whim, too.
I've never met that guy, but he's one of my favorite.
Wow, that's awesome. That's crazy. He's in Atlanta. Yeah. That's awesome. I'm surprised I never ran into each other.
I know.
Yeah.
It seems literally impossible, but because we both kind of got into the industry at the same time. I heard he got out Full Sail in like 92.
Yep.
And I graduated Berkeley in December 91.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And I moved to New York City at May 1993.
Wow.
So I was engineering in Ohio for a year before I came to the city.
Gotcha.
But yeah, 1993 New York City,
wow.
It feels like, you know, every year they get the XXL freshman class.
Oh,
like
that's the freshman class? So it's Ken Lewis, Leslie Braithwaite. Look at that freshman class. That was like that was the
I think Guru was around that time, maybe like
Guru
2
was
years.
Yeah, he probably was.
Yeah.
That was like that Iverson, Kobe,
yeah.
like that year. That's that draft class.
That's
hard.
crazy. Facts.
Well, let me introduce this podcast because this is kind of weird. Anytime you see this in this room, you already know we have a very special guest. But let me introduce the podcast first. What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Devvon Terrell. Welcome to the Audio Nerds podcast for audio nerds like yourself. Please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Remember, one lucky person in the comment section is going to get that VIP Gold Edition EQ or compressor. Also, you can become a paid member of the channel. For instance, our paid members already saw this episode, so you're late. To the right of me,
hey man, the FL Studio user. Y'all been killing me lately, but
murdering.
I'm gonna be back. Come on,
It's okay.
Yo, all it takes is an update, and FL's back, and everybody's.
That's very true. Can I say this?
FL's gangster.
Can I say something? I'm gonna be open.
Gangster.
I'm gonna be honest. I lost that battle.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I lost. I'm very aware. Y'all don't have to keep saying it. I lost. I know I lost.
And can I be honest?
What?
If you know, you know. FL's been on a gangster run.
Y'all doing a lot of weird
What?
stuff.
You saw the tweet?
Oh yes, they threatening people anyway.
Wait, what?
I love it.
Hey, we'll talk about it in a second. What's your name, sir?
Man, you know, it's the able-bodied, able guy, Courtney T.
He wrote that.
Yeah, he did.
He wrote that before.
Wrote that before?
Honestly, I don't think he did. I think that was ChatGPT.
That's crazy.
Able-bodied.
I would say I. You see when you're so nice that even your own mans them can't believe your skill? That's cool, though.
Man's them.
That's
I
cool,
like
though.
that. I like
That's
that.
cool,
You
though.
in your roots today.
You know?
Well, whenever you see us in this room, you know that we have a very special guest.
Absolutely.
Today's guest, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Has some of the craziest credits I've ever seen on Earth.
It is in.
Like,
no, it messed me up because I knew some. Of course, we knew a few records. Like, oh yeah, he did this. No.
For sure. Producer, mixer, songwriter. From Mariah Carey, Kanye West, Alicia Keys, Taylor Swift, BTS, Bruno Mars, Wu-Tang Clan.
Hey, shoot! I just found out even some of your favorite records from in the early 2010s by artists such as Fun.
No, we're gonna talk about that.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
What?
I didn't know that.
Can we? What?
Pete Rock.
Yeah.
I know.
I want to start with that though. But
Okay.
Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for Ken Lewis.
Yeah.
It's nice to be in the building, guys.
Yes.
Wait.
Okay.
Double entendre.
What?
Double entendre.
What?
Ken is in the building. What he got on? A little Ken shirt.
I seen that. No, we was going to get there.
Did you mix anything on that album?
No.
Oh, that would have been a
like, wow, man's them. So
how was your day, Ken?
Ken,
It's
you have a crazy career, man. All the stuff you've done, and I've actually heard like these cool, quirky stories and stuff like that about the things you've done. So the first thing we like to ask everybody when they first come is, what was your DAW journey? So what was the first DAW or outboard or whatever it was that you started with, and what are you in now?
Y'all ain't ready for this.
He said,
so of course, analog tape started all, but the first DAW was Sound Tools. Sound Tools was the predecessor to Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And Sound Tools was 2 channels. And anytime you had to do a single render, you might as well go take a half-hour break because it was going to take a half an hour to process.
Wow.
On the fastest computer of the day. It was so slow, it was just like almost unusable.
No way.
And swear to God, it was just awful. And then the first version of Pro Tools was 4 tracks. And then it was 8, and then it was 16, then they just kept expanding it out.
Right.
So, I started learning Pro Tools real early. That was at Berkeley. I was at Berkeley from 89 to 91.
Nice.
And then after that, I really kind of became a Logic guy around like the late 90s. I did an album with David Byrne from the Talking Heads. Yeah. And the guy producing was Mike Mangini, and Mike uses Logic. And so I was like, well, I guess I better use Logic. Wow. So the first album, Mike kind of taught me Logic, and the second album that I did with him, because I did a bunch of albums with him with different artists. Right. I kind of, you know, we co-ran Logic, and then by the third album I did with him, I was running the show. So it was amazing to have somebody at that level be able to show me all of his tricks with that DAW, because that was a gift.
Right. Did you ever revisit it post the Apple acquisition?
Yeah, I'm still a Logic guy. I like still Logic Pro Tools.
Oh, got you. Yeah. So you do you produce in Logic and then record stuff?
Usually. Right. So any kind of beat production I do in Logic. And usually live stuff like vocal production is Pro Tools. Any kind of live recording is typically Pro Tools. But if it's just a guitar or a bass or something, I'll just throw it into Logic and easy peasy.
And didn't mess with it.
And then mixing is usually Pro Tools. Although if I'm producing and I love the rough mix in Logic, usually I'm leaving it alone and I'm tweaking the rough mix in Logic and just bringing it home. Yeah. Like I don't feel the need to have to mix in Pro Tools. I just find it a better medium to mix.
Understood. I like this. I know you do. He was like, so he doesn't have to use it all the time. Question for you: what is your setup at home and stuff like that? Because I know you work from home a lot.
I have 2 studios at home.
Gotcha. Wow. What is like your setup for the most part? Like as far as your interface and preamps, like what kind of like setup do you have?
So I have my Studio A is a Avid Matrix Studio. Okay. And then I also have an Apollo Twin in there. And we network the 2 studios together via Ethernet, I think.
Dante. Okay.
Definitely Dante.
Gotcha.
And everything's Dante. Right. We have one of those dad mom controller things.
Wow. Okay.
So that's our main switcher. In front of me, when I sold my console like last year, so I could afford Atmos speakers. And
which console did you have?
The AWS 900 Plus SSL,
nice.
Which
SSL.
I fucking love.
Yeah.
And man, that was the best console ever. But you can't really mix Atmos on it, and I needed the money, so
so you had to just do that, because I know it's a hybrid board, right? So it interfaces with
flick of the switch, and you're controlling Pro Tools faders and pans. Flick of the switch, and you're on analog.
Right.
Wow. And it's amazing.
It's amazing.
So my transfer over, I switched to the SSL UF8s with a UC1.
Gotcha.
And that, I gotta say, SSL solved it at least for analog guys like me who have done their entire life in front of a fucking huge console, and the controllers feel like SSL faders, and the EQ is the SSL EQ layout, so it's all muscle memory. So for me working on a console, you never look at what you're doing because you always know where your fingers are, just like driving a car or playing guitar. So I found that when they put the compressor in the right place and the EQ in the right place, I could just get back to focusing on the music. That's the best thing about working on a console as opposed to a DAW, is a DAW naturally focuses your attention onto the screen. Whereas a console, you don't need to look at the screen until you need to look at the screen. So it allows you, in my opinion, to connect to the music coming out of the speakers much better, because you're less mixing with your eyes than your ears and your heart. The way that the SSL controllers work now, you can lay out a digital console. You put a channel strip across everything, and you lay it out in the console, and then it comes up as a digital board in the box. So you can work without ever touching a mouse if you want, or you can work with the mouse or the controllers. You have all these choices, and it just feels natural. And this debate about analog and digital, there is no difference anymore. The only difference is how you capture the original signal. So I'm a big proponent of a great mic chain.
Got you.
And that's where the analog shit really comes in for me.
Got you.
But the result can be exactly the same on analog and digital. And the only difference is the tactile experience of how you get there. So what decisions you make because of what gear you're using and your comfort level with it and your creativity level with it. That's the most important thing about choosing your gear is, you know, I mean, it's great to have incredibly great pieces of gear. And again, I highly recommend a great vocal chain.
Right.
But everything else is like, you know, to your taste.
Right.
If it makes you feel more creative, if it super speeds up your workflow, or if it makes you money, that's a good investment. But if it's not two of those three, then probably not.
Then it doesn't matter.
You said just a great vocal chain. You repeatedly said that. So I want to know, I mean, there's such a thin line between, especially with the budgets now, that a lot of mics are amazing. But what would be, I guess, the super chain to you?
Well, I built my super chain over time, just replacing stuff as I find better stuff. And now it's been my C800G I've had since the late 90s. It's immaculate.
Wow.
Nobody has ever sounded less than stellar on that mic.
Right.
Into a Groove Tubes Viper mic pre with 8 tubes, and then into a Thermionic Culture, the Phoenix Verimue compressor with a bunch more tubes, and then into a hardware Cush Clariphonic, and then into converters.
Gotcha. What converters are you using?
The Matrix Studio.
Gotcha. You got the Matrix. What do you? Sorry, nerd question. What do you like about the Verimue compressor? Like, what do you notice about it?
Dude, I was ready to sell it. I couldn't get it to sound anything that I liked. So that's why I actually bought the Phoenix.
Okay.
It's a Verimue as well. And I was like, okay, I can't get this Verimue to sound good, but let me try that one. And I tried that, and it was too grabby on the mix bus for my tastes. So I was like, all right, before I sell the Manly, I'm going to just spend an afternoon with it and play. And I was just twisting knobs and listening. And all of a sudden, I hit this setting, and I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? and I looked at the knobs, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? So my basic setting is input usually all the way up. And I have the slowest attack time, slowest release time.
Okay.
And the sidechain filter is in.
Okay.
And I never change my parameters. I only push into it until I get the level of reduction that I'm looking for, which is usually 6 to 10 dB on the needle.
Okay.
And when you're at slowest release, that needle sits there.
Yeah.
There's not much play in it at all. And then you hit stop, and it takes a good 4 or 5 seconds to get back.
Right.
I still to this day don't truly understand why that sounds so fucking good on my mixes.
Right.
But it's like when people talk about glue.
That's what I was going to ask you.
That's the glue. And like because I've done some teaching, when I've shown my students, it's like the cheat code to, you know, like when you're mixing a verse, you got the verse sounding good, you got the chorus sounding good, but you can't get the transition from the verse into the chorus, right?
Sure.
And it just... So the Verimue usually fixes that problem in a matter of moments. Wow. It has this crazy way of just kind of flattening out your dynamic range without sounding like your dynamic range is gone.
Interesting.
And it's not my finisher, it's my starter. So it's usually, I start my mix bus with like HG2 black box typically.
Oh, wow.
And then Verimue.
Gotcha.
And then... Pultec Pro Legacy from UAD, which is the most musical EQ I've ever heard. And at least in the plugin world.
Gotcha.
I'm not an insane person. But and then what else is on my mix bus? Then it's a random whatever. It could be like Master Desk. I usually finish with Pro L2 or Gold Clip.
Nice. Shout out Ryan Schwab.
Ryan Schwab is great.
Man, love Ryan.
Gold Clip has been fantastic. That's been seeing a lot of use. And let's see, that's about it.
That's your chain. Can I ask one question? Question for you. So you talked about how like the capture is like the most important thing to you. You did the horns on all of the lights for Kanye West.
Produced the horn section on all the lights.
That's right.
Till we get a round of applause.
Wait a second. Yes.
Live.
Yeah, exactly. I told him, let me see. He said that. You did the horn section on all of the lights, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, how did you capture that? Like, obviously, I know you obviously wrote the music and stuff like that for it, but how did you capture that? Because those horns are legendary.
Yeah.
I have the cheat code with my horn player. Danny Flam is the cheat code. I gotta give it to Danny. So, but I'll back up and I'll tell you the whole All of the Lights story.
Please.
And because I had worked with Kanye a bunch at that point, but most of my work with Kanye was remote. And so Kanye calls me up one day. Well, Plain Pat had sent me this little melody on a shit MP3, and I shit you not, it sounded like a $20 Casio keyboard, and it was just me, and that was it, and it sounded just like that.
Right.
And Kanye called me up, and he was like, "Did you hear it?" And I'm like, "Yep." He's like, "I want it to sound like a marching band in the stadium at halftime." I'm like, and that was almost the entirety of the entire conversation.
Right.
And, and I was like, all right. So I called my horn player, Danny. The funniest thing about that was I had never done horns for Kanye before, and never at any time did he ask me, so do you know anything about horns?
Wow. He just said, yo, so I need this and make it happen.
Yeah, because I was the figure it out guy for Kanye for a long time, or at least one of them. So when he knew what he wanted, but nobody in the inner circle could figure it out, I was the guy that got the call. So if you're the figure it out guy for Kanye, you get sent down the craziest musical lanes you can possibly imagine, and that just built the craziest frickin' skill sets of my life.
Right.
Which has kind of led me to here. But so All of the Lights, I get that melody, and then I call my horn player, and Danny Flam shows up with 28 horns. And so he had like 4 trombones, 3 trumpets, a bass trumpet, a bass 2 bass trombones, and like flugelhorn and sousaphone, and there were horns I didn't know what they were.
Even though it was, what is that?
And so it was really kind of me and Danny going through and letting him give me some ideas, and then refining those ideas, and then I'd give him ideas, and we'd refine those. And I over recorded a ton of stuff, so what you hear is far less than what was actually captured that day. But I basically just spent like a very long day with Danny capturing every idea I had.
Right.
And then sent Danny away. I also had Tony Garuso play the high trumpets. He was like one of Sinatra's trumpet guys.
Wow.
So I was really blessed with amazing musicians. And Danny Flam could play every single one of those horns proficiently. It was mind-blowing.
Right.
And he's a New York guy, so if you need a New York horn player, New York brass, check him out.
Check him out.
Wow.
But I just used him on the Taj Farron album as well, and he killed it.
Wow.
Shout out to
So
Danny.
good.
Shout out to Danny. So,
Yeah.
and you recorded it. I was going to ask him about recording it and stuff like that.
But yeah, but back to the All of the Lights. So I put, then I sent Danny away, and I spent the next 2 days just sifting through it and comping and putting everything together. Right. And that's what you hear. But the way I captured it was 3 microphones. I had the C800, ribbon mic, and I think a small diaphragm condenser.
Okay. Wow.
Might have been a big diaphragm condenser. I can't remember. But a condenser and a ribbon and the C800.
Okay.
And depending on what horn it was would depend on where I would put the mics in the room, and I captured all 3 mics for every performance. And then when I was comping everything, I would choose, okay, this mic has this quality, and I was able to say, if you have trombones, you have 4 trombone parts. Even though there are 4 different trombones, I might use the C800 on this and the ribbon on that, and so you're layering so many different aspects of it. One thing that I learned early in my career was, if you take like one trombone player or one trumpet player and you have them layer themselves 4 times or more, it sounds terrible. It sounds like a chorusing mess of garbage.
Right.
Wow.
But if you have that same player on one single chain play 4 different trumpets, 4 actual different instruments, it sounds like 4 players played it.
Wow.
And so that's how we built that whole thing. It was mostly one guy playing everything, and with Tony adding the high trumpets, and then just comped it and polished it and then sent it off. Then I didn't hear anything for like 3 fucking months. And,
After you sent that off?
yeah.
Wow.
So in Kanye land, that typically means, okay, so he listened to it for 30 seconds and he didn't connect with it, and now it's in the trash heap of, your career. So, but 3 months later, they called me for another gig, and they were like, and while I had him on the phone, I think I had Plain Pat on the phone. I was like, bro, whatever happened to those Ghetto University horns? Because the song was originally called Ghetto University when they were making it. And if you listen to the verses, that totally makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
But so I was like, what happened to those horns? And he's like, oh, dude, we love them. They're in. No changes. And I'm like, oh.
You like, wow. Yes.
Oh, that worked.
He's like, thank God. Wow.
Because I've done a lot of release stuff for Kanye, but I've done a lot of stuff for Kanye that never got released. That I was like, this shit is fire.
Right.
And then it just is like, it doesn't go.
Right.
And it is what it is.
So working with Kanye, somebody who's very documented to revisit and revise a lot. How was that?
Well, I don't work with him anymore, but I do most of my work with him in my own studio. So, they can send me notes and I'll just revise, and it's not the craziness of having to be in the same room with him. But yeah, I mean, I started with Kanye as a sample recreation. That was my first thing.
Wow.
I was just going to ask you, because you played some of the stuff on College Dropout.
Yeah.
Oh, can I ask something?
Go ahead.
Family Business.
One of my favorite Kanye songs.
All the glitters.
How was
It's
not gold?
It's not
I guess
reality.
even just in broad retrospect of working with Kanye and overall, every project every project in total, but from specifically College Dropout to Pablo, there's always been this incremental change from adding orchestral elements to synths on Graduation to the horns. You know what I mean? How was growing with him, I guess, and always becoming the guide to find what he needs when he can't find it?
I mean, it was super challenging, of course, which I love. I love a good challenge. I'm not scared of that at all. It was great. The first time I got called to do a sample for Kanye, he wasn't unknown. I think he had done Izohova as a producer. Okay. So he had a couple hits under his belt and he was known, but he was still just looked at as a producer. Right. And I was working with Just Blaze a lot at the time, and I was playing a lot of studio music for Justin and mixing his records. And I get a call from G. Roberson and Jay Brown one day, and they say, do you know who Kanye West is? I'm like, yeah, I know. And they're like, so he has this Paul McCartney record that he sampled that they cleared the publishing, but they can't clear the master, and we need it recreated. Do you know how to do that? And I'm like, of course I know how to do that shit. Send that shit over. Man, I didn't know how. I was like, oh, what am I doing? Right. So I spent like the next 3 or 4 days figuring it out and just teaching myself a whole bunch of new techniques and solving puzzles. It's all sample recreation is just solving puzzles. Right. And then I sent that off, and then all of a sudden they loved it, and I was the sample recreation guy. Right. And so I started with Kanye. But the great thing about that is it has been the great door opener of my career. And that led to producing the horns on All the Lights. Wow. And so, sample recreation is easily the most tedious, difficult, challenging work that I ever have to do. Right. But and I usually only do it when I know it's going to be something. Because the money's just not worth the time.
I figured that.
And I quote them on the time, and they, I get these like, it's what? How much is it? And I'm like, bro, you have no idea. Go have your guy do it, and then come back to me. Right. Yeah. And then,
and then we'll figure it out from there.
Right.
You also, I know and found out about you with the sample creation, like recreation and stuff like that. You were doing a lot. You did some stuff on Watch the Throne as well. Wow. Did you play accordion on the end of you played something. You played
Illest
on
motherfucker.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. The interlude at the end of No Church in the Wild is, I call it the polka orchestra. Okay. So I created the whole polka orchestra. That's an original piece of music. I played every single note on that thing. Right. But my hip hop credibility, claim to fame is that I played accordion on Watch the Throne.
Oh man,
That's crazy.
wow.
That is such a random stat too.
Oh, I know. It was like the funnest thing ever. And the accordions are older than I am. I've had 2 of them in my family since, I was born. And so they've just been in the closet, and every now and then I pull them out and just play them because they're really cool.
That's
nice.
tough.
Yeah.
And you played it on that
nice.
legendary album. It was like, this
Oh,
is great
man.
now.
Yeah.
Dust off the old accordion.
But also on that album, Danny Flam didn't play horns, but connected me to 4 horn players. The craziest story on Watch the Throne was I get a call like noon one day, and I can't remember if it was Plain Pat or who, but they're like, can you produce a horn section for the bridge of New Day for Kanye today? We need it done by 7 p.m. And I'm like, what? So
Today?
So I was like, yeah, I'll just call Danny, no problem. So I called Danny. Danny's overseas. He's not available. So Danny was great. He hooked me up with like 4 first call New York session players. So I wrote the parts in my head. They messengered me out the music, and I looped it up real quick on a CD so I could put it in my car. And I had the music of the bridge section looping while I was driving into the city, writing the horn parts in my head. And then when I got to the city, everything was set up in the studio, and I sat down and wrote out all the parts, put them on the stands. The musicians show up. We spend 2 hours cutting the bridge horns.
Right.
I polish it up 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I jump in a cab at 7 o'clock. I'm down to Mercer Hotel at 7:15 with a thumb drive in my hand and the finished, because that was the close of the album. The album was closing that day,
Right.
So they needed, it was then or never,
Right.
So,
At that point, and that was it.
On that project, did you also, and this is just knowing that you did the horns on a bunch of records, did you also do it on Liftoff by any chance?
I worked on Liftoff, but I don't think I did the horns on Liftoff.
What did you do on Liftoff?
I can't.
He's like, listen, man. I've done 100,000
that was a
sessions.
while ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I'm surprised I remember I worked on Liftoff.
Yeah. He's like, I think I worked on Lift. I feel like I would remember, right? Like, yeah.
But in that year, you also worked on around that year, you worked on one of my favorite songs of all time.
What?
Because it was the first song in my entire lifetime. I was probably like fucking 7 or something. But where it felt like I heard a song and it was just like, this is madness, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful mess. And that song is We Are Young by Fun.
Bro.
Absolutely.
How was that?
That slipped past my radar, by the way. I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you had anything to do. Please.
I just had a small part on it, but I had the big small part. So I created the snare drum.
Wow.
So I created that snare drum and one of the kicks and some of the toms.
Wow.
And that's it.
That
On
is
the hook part?
The
Or in the little quick part?
no, not the real ones. The big. Yeah.
Wow.
The big, huge, legendary snare on that. I created that. So, and that got me on to, after I did that, I got called from Alicia Keys to do the big drums on Girl on Fire.
Right.
Which was a completely different process. That was all live drums.
Right.
And me and Dylan Wissing, my studio drummer, went into Alicia Keys' studio, The Oven in New York City, and set up just a kick and snare. He brought like 16 kicks and 20 snares. And we set up probably 20 mics around the room to capture, and I just captured everything. It was the same process as Danny. And then I just captured a ton of different hits at levels. But the sauce with the Girl on Fire was, I can't remember which snare Dylan used, but he laid a splash cymbal on the head of the snare. And when you hit the snare head, it would just like... And that is the way you get the Girl on Fire snare.
Oh my gosh. So it would like swell, like kind of.
Yeah, it would like jump off the head while it vibrates just enough to smash back onto it and give it a different tone. And we would have never, ever gotten that sound without that splash cymbal on the snare head.
That's
How did you ever
insane.
capture that? Microphone, like, how did you capture that?
So it was a bunch of close mics and a bunch of ambient mics at different places in the room, distances in the room and whatnot. And then I just took it back and listened to everything and just started mixing and matching different drum. Like there are several different snares that are layered on that.
Gotcha.
But the main sound of it is that snare that had the splash cymbal.
Right.
But that's a combination of several different snare drums and several different kick drums that I kind of combined to get what I was going for.
Right.
But yeah, it's weird that I ended up being the big drums guy for a while.
That's so
and
interesting.
I didn't know that sound design was such a big part of your story. Like, how did you like stumble on to that time?
It was Kanye. It was the, you know, when Kanye, like, you got to understand, I'm sure you guys do, how much respect in the industry other artists had for Kanye of all different genres. It didn't matter. Like, right before the pandemic, I got called from Avenged Sevenfold, and they brought me out to Orange County to produce with them for a week because I had done production on choirs for Kanye. Wow. And they were like, we heard your Kanye work and we want to see what you do with us. And I'm like, you're Avenged Sevenfold. Right. Okay. I mean, I fucking love you guys, but how did I get this gig? And let's fucking go. Yeah. Which was an amazing week. And then COVID hit and we.
And then everything kind of dissipated. Actually, that's there's something else that you got a gig like that, if I'm not mistaken. I seen one time because I watched some of your stuff that you've just like been talking to people. You got recommended. You did some stuff on Born Center for J. Cole.
Oh, yeah. I did a lot of Born Center.
You did a lot of it. You got recommended from Drake. Drake is the one. That is the wildest. I heard that, and I was just like, Drake called and said, yo, call Ken?
No, that's not what Drake said.
Okay. How did that happen?
I've never met Drake, never been in the same room with him, worked on a couple albums of his.
Okay.
But I get a call. Okay, so I'll tell you how Drake got it. So Drake calls J. Cole and says, who did the choirs on Lord Knows? And J. Cole says, oh, Just Blaze did that. So they call Just Blaze. And Just Blaze says, no, you got to call Ken Lewis.
Right.
So that's how I got that gig. Okay. So I'm sitting in my studio on a Saturday night, like 6 p.m. And I get a phone call. Hello. Hey, J. Cole. I was like, okay.
Okay. Right.
So we get to talking, and I could hear him typing on his keyboard as he's starting to talk to me, and he's like, you worked on Last Call? You worked on all Falls? You worked? And he just started rattling off like a bunch of records that I did. I'm like, yep. He's like, can I come over tonight and play you my record? And I'm like, yes, sir.
Sure can, buddy.
So it was just him and his driver stayed out on the street, and he got there about 10 p.m. and maybe stayed for 3-4 hours. And he played me his whole album in progress, which wasn't so far along, but it was, a conglomeration of pretty killer songs. And I remember him playing me the early version of Crooked Smile and just going like, this is a fucking record.
Wow. Yeah.
It just you've heard it. It's just so
I'm sure.
Yeah. God. Wow. So yeah, to get called on that. So I ended up producing on 9 songs on Born Center, 9 songs and skits. They weren't all songs. Wow. But all of the live choirs and live strings on Born Center I did. So I worked on She Knows and Crooked Smile, and, Born Center, and a few others.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jeez Louise.
I actually have something in that vein. Between that Born Center, your numerous credits, the Kanye credits, Recovery with Eminem.
You did Recovery?
But was it Believe Me with Wayne and Drake, and then the fun stuff, Alicia Keys. You have this skill, and like you're drawn to like making these kind of like larger than life records and like soundscapes. What do you attribute it to outside of just the sample recreation that keeps you like on your feet in terms of creating these larger than life soundscapes?
Well, I bill myself as the weirdest resume in the entire industry.
Yes, you do.
And when you see it, you're just like, oh yeah, okay, that makes total sense.
Right.
And and it's really it was the Kanye effect that got me down all of those different lanes. Yeah. Or at least mostly the Kanye effect. But it's just been lucky. I just work nonstop.
Right.
And I can't even remember the original question you had.
He's like, he got lost in that whole
Yeah,
thing. with
just
the-
like how do you just creating these larger than life
Oh, yeah.
records? Like what do you attribute that to?
Well, sometimes I'm part of a much bigger team that's creating that whole soundscape.
Right,
so
for
I'm
sure.
just, a designated hitter. And sometimes I'm the producer and I'm creating everything. And so I've found my personal enjoyment in having different challenges every day. And like I just produced Taj Farron. He's a 15-year-old blues guitarist from Australia, which I had no interest in producing. He was 14 when I produced him. I was like, Australian blues guitarist? No. Don't. Nothing about that. 14, forget it.
Right.
And then I saw him play. I went to a show and I was like, oh, he's like Stevie Ray Vaughan at 14 years old. And I'm not exaggerating.
Right.
And I was like, I can do something with this. He had no songs.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's do an album together.
Yeah.
And I'd never
Nice.
produced a blues album.
Right.
I mean, I understand the format, but I was like, all right, challenge accepted, locked in.
Right.
And we hit #1 on the iTunes blues charts. I think when the vinyl drops, we'll hit #1 on the Billboard blues charts.
Wow, that's amazing. And he's
on.
from Australia.
Yeah.
Wow.
Lives in
That's
America
crazy.
now.
Lives in the States.
On that blues, that's so crazy that you landed on blues. My second question was going to be then, funny you mentioned blues. What was your contribution on Blacker the Berry?
The main drum loop.
Wow. That's insane.
He's
Which
like, that's
Black
the
of the
thing.
Yeah,
Which Black of the Bear?
Kendrick Lamar. It's a
You
Pimp a
did,
Butterfly.
yo. All right,
Yo, bro,
Mr. Lewis.
Bro,
Mr. Lewis,
I'm
wait.
telling you,
Real
I
talk.
kept going, and then I was like, all right, enough.
It's like
For all of my, I don't know if you're a gamer. I'm not really much of a gamer.
I'm not a gamer because I love playing games.
Yep.
And if I start, I can't stop.
Bro,
So
I
start.
wonder if you know exactly like the place you hold in 2K history. I
No.
play NBA 2K. And I kid you not, you have at least 3 or 4 records on every soundtrack.
No
that matters.
shit.
I could, because
I
it
had
was
no
like a
idea.
stretch from 2010 to 2015 where like the soundtracks mattered.
Oh, yeah.
For 2K.
Yes, it did. Yeah,
And
now
the
it's like-
opening sequence for like 2K13 was All of the Lights, and then the opening sequence
No
for
shit.
2K14 was fucking
I had
Not
no
Afraid.
idea.
You did, he said I had no idea. I just,
Really?
just
Yeah,
my
literally.
publisher just sends it over.
Fucking Not Afraid was on one.
Oh, damn.
insane.
A bunch of the records you mentioned. So
I didn't work
a
on
bunch
Not
of Watch
Afraid,
the Throne, bro.
You were the king of 2K.
Wow.
You didn't even know. Look at that.
So you mentioned earlier, just in case YouTube's listening, the pandemic, right? you mentioned Rovid, and I remember reading that. Well, looking at your credits, you were extremely active for a closed world. And I saw that you did a lot of remote sessions with audio movers and using audio movers and Skype. I wonder, how did you stumble upon those I guess those tools, and do they still hold a piece in your
Oh, yeah. Necessity.
Yeah.
So I was producing a Japanese artist, and I flew over to Japan right before the end of February, beginning of March 2020. I was in Japan.
Oh
Oh, wow.
And let me tell you, it was much safer than New York City.
wow. I can
Everybody
imagine.
there was masked up. Everybody there was super respectful. It was really incredible to see. And then I came back to New York Customs and I saw everybody grouped together,
chill.
and none of the customs agents gave a shit about anything COVID. And I'm like, New York's about to get hit by a fucking bomb.
It was
right
bad,
now.
yeah.
Holy shit.
Right.
And then 5 days later, we shut down.
Right.
So, but for me, most of my career in the last decade plus has been, I had my own studio at home. So most of the work comes to me unless I got to travel. And my business model didn't change much over COVID. So I just kept rolling. We started our mixing night broadcast during COVID, which is still going. And yeah, it was, I just, it sucked that the world stopped, but
Yeah.
the best thing about COVID for me was that I realized nobody cared anymore where you were located, and being in New York City wasn't helping me.
Right.
So we moved back to my hometown area of Cincinnati, Ohio, and just it's such a cost of living difference.
My God.
Yeah.
Oh my!
I think that's what a lot of us
Unbelievable.
wanted up doing. Like we
Yeah.
wanted up.
Right.
Like I actually bought my home during COVID because I was like, I think I'm done with the city. I was like, I'm just kind of over it, and it was getting weird and wonky
Yeah, it
too.
was
So I
getting
just
different.
kind of left.
Literally, I'm never leaving.
One thing is funny, right? Of all the credits that we've named, right? there's one we haven't even brought up at all, which threw me off so much because I had no idea. You worked on Uptown Funk.
Gonna give it to you.
That is a massive record with Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars. How did that come about? Like, how did you guys?
Speaking of big drums, I created the big clap and a couple percussion elements and shit on Uptown Funk for Mark Ronson. Right. And it was another one of these out of the blue calls. Mark calls me, and I had never met him, never talked to him. Was a huge fan of his work. I mean, that first Amy Winehouse album was just
insane.
Yeah. So I'd always wanted to work with him. So he calls me. The first thing he says is, he's like, I really, really love your work, and I have got to apologize up front for asking you to do some really simple shit. And I'm like, bro, if you asked me to get you coffee, you would have a cup in your hands in 5 minutes. What do you need?
Right.
And so he told me, and nobody knew at that time it was. I'm sure they had an inkling, but I didn't get to hear the whole record. I just heard like the section of the record that I got to work on.
Gotcha.
And so I heard the music and but no vocals.
Wow.
And then it comes out. And you're like, you're not expecting a Mark Ronson record to blow the fuck up.
Oh my
God. But you're happy to be on it.
Super Bowl.
And then Uptown Funk. Oh my God.
Yeah. It was to the moon.
Man.
And what a song.
What an amazing from front to back.
And the thing about, well, first, how is it like having a diamond record?
I've got 4 of them now.
Oh,
so
I'm about to say, like, I was like, he's got a few.
I know,
Mariah
when
Carey.
you think about it,
Got a few of them.
you know, it's so fickle with streaming and
It's
everything.
so fickle.
No, I'm serious. Like,
No, I hear you.
it's-
You know what it is? It's kind
a
of
lot
hard.
of records that you've done, I would assume have gone double, triple diamond.
Yeah, you done BTS records. Like you
Bro.
done so many. What?
Still on Bruno, yeah.
No, it's fine. No,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
just
we're
saying.
fine,
I'm just saying as far as the credits and stuff like that. Like one thing as far as engineers is concerned, and I love Muso. Thankfully, we
Yeah,
starting to have
Muso's
that
great.
one platform that's kind of like
That's showing
I
us the
can look you
credits.
up
Yeah,
because it's
right.
kind of hard for years. We would have to like anytime, even when we have people on, it's like okay, I know about you, but of course there's records I don't know you did, and I would love to just kind of like study. So it's nice to see like even your Muso, like your Muso's laid out nice and clean, top 1% of engineers on earth. And I'm just able to see some of the records that you've done and stuff like that.
And yeah, it's insane to see. But Uptown Funk, it sets the tone for one of my favorite albums of all time because it directly preceded 24 Karat Magic, the entire experience, which I feel like Bruno's one of my favorite artists of all time. So
No, mine
that
too.
album, and it's still his last album that he put out. Like
That's
solo,
his last album?
Solo album, yeah.
Solo, yeah,
Well,
he's
aside
done
from
Silk Sonic,
Yeah, wait,
and
I
he's
know,
done
but-
the Gaga
Yeah,
style stuff.
2016,
But,
almost
24
10
Karat
years.
He let
Magic.
that.
Man.
He said,
Yeah, that's
Bro,
gonna
Bruno
be
had
sitting
two
for that for
Super
a bit.
Bowls before his third album. That's fucking insane. But going back on it, one of my favorite songs on the album that you worked on was Perm.
yeah.
Ooh, love that record.
That was sample recreations again.
Really?
James-
And yeah, I did the horns on Perm. And didn't tap in Danny. I did all those with libraries, which was a fucking nightmare, but it was possible.
What libraries? did you
yeah,
use?
wait, exactly.
Man, I have so many. When I do sample recreations, I don't necessarily think about the tools. I listen incredibly intently to what I'm trying to recreate, and then I let my brain tell me what to use.
Yeah.
So I don't really think too much about how I got to an end result. And if I'm recreating like an orchestra or a string section or something, it's almost never from one library. It's always from multiple different libraries, and often I'll have like a string player come in and layer just one part or so until I bought the Rolly, and then I don't need string players anymore. Sorry, string players. But,
Wow.
that Rolly is.
What is that?
The MPE keyboard, right?
Oh,
the black keyboard with
Yes.
the black
with the-
rubber things.
so you can get the expression of everything.
Yes.
I didn't know Logic
So-
had MPE compatibility.
Yeah, it does.
Wow.
Yeah.
He said yes, they
Oh, yeah.
do. Wow, Logic is a little
man,
sneaky,
yeah.
low key.
I'm so
95.
mad FL still doesn't have it. So stupid.
Yeah, there's this thing called the SWAM engine. I think they're closing it down, but I still have it. And but it's like a suite of solo instruments like violin, viola, cello, you know, all the strings, and a bunch of horns, flutes, things like that. And if you spend enough time with it and you dial it in right, you can get that shit sounding exactly like a real player.
Interesting.
It is
Really
shocking.
interesting.
Wow.
And the thing that I've noticed about the Rolly is sometimes having like a single viola or cello play a line in a section is much more powerful than using an entire string pad of an orchestra.
Gotcha.
You know, because the orchestra is like diffuse and it isn't, and this cello just sounds dead real, and it just gives you the space and the vibe that you need for that string element. And so I find that a lot. I may layer that on top, or I may only use that. You know?
Wow, got you. So you just got a bunch of like Hans Zimmer, like all the
It's Spitfire.
Spitfire, East West.
East West classic, East West, all of those things.
That's a good verses actually.
East West. Go ahead.
Spitfire. Oh.
Go ahead.
I wasn't even planning on One Gotta Go, but I
ahead.
guess we might as well play a game that we like to play. One Gotta Go. So I'll give you two choices,
Okay.
and you just pick one to keep. All right, and we'll start with East West versus Spitfire.
I would guess that Spitfire is probably higher quality, but I gotta let go of Spitfire because I rely on East West more.
Wow.
Interesting.
It's so many more things than just orchestral shit. The composer cloud has the most diverse collection of shit on planet Earth.
Because we always have this rivalry.
We have this argument. Yeah, we go back and forth because
Because
we like
he's Team East West, I'm Team Spitfire.
we're Team Spitfire.
Yeah.
But you know what you said is yes, like the quality, like the sonics of it. I love Spitfire for the sonics,
Yeah.
but
100%.
I can understand maybe from a workflow, just options that you probably have in East
Sometimes
West.
Spitfire be messing up like with the library.
Can I be honest
trying
with
to
you?
Open it and it just won't.
So
open.
me and you share. Listen, I did a deal with him, which I should have never
yeah.
did. He was younger. He was way younger. He was like, "Yo, bro, just buy it and then we'll share it." And I was like,
Oh, because the Spitfire thing was like $1,500, but I had a student discount.
"Yeah, the student
And it
discount." So that was the
crazy,
deal.
So I was like,
So he was in
Right,
school. I was like, "All right, I'll use your student discount and I'll get it." And now we share it.
Lawsuit.
No. You can send it to us, Spitfire. We love that.
exactly.
But yeah, we had that. Yeah, whatever. We got to figure that out.
Oh, man.
Something else I wanted to bring up. Go ahead.
The game. We in the game.
Oh, finish the
We in the
game. I thought it was just
game.
that one. I'm sorry. OG. Go ahead.
Arteria versus Native Instruments.
Native instruments.
Quick.
Quick. Ooh,
Not an
then
Arteria fan
Ooh.
Gotcha.
at all.
Gotcha.
Don't like that company.
Might be a stretch. I think this is a layup, but I might as well ask. Reactor or Contact?
Contact.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just- I
Okay.
figured.
Honestly, I've never even opened a Reactor. I feel
Reactor's
bad.
great. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm a
There's some
contact.
hidden
Like all
gems
my
in there.
drum, all my samples
Yeah.
and everything is in
Contact is
contact.
great.
Like I'll spend days
And they
just
just put out
organizing.
Contact 8.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
But I don't upgrade my contact until I'm 2 contacts behind. I wait until I'm like, all right.
He's like, there goes
Now
nine.
it's
We
time.
good.
Bro, when I had to go to 7, like I was on 5.
Five?
Yeah.
I was stressed out because my Pro Tools, yes, I'm producing the Pro Tools. Pro Tools wasn't the M1, they weren't updating the 5 for M1. So all of my stuff
Library
wasn't
was-
working,
yep.
and I was scared because I took
Yeah.
time to build those libraries. But I found out how to just turn it into like a contact format, and then I can just load it. But remember, I was like, yo, I
Yeah.
can't
I
transfer
thought it
it.
was cooked for you. I
Oh
ain't
my
gonna lie.
God. I was so scared. Like,
Oh
but
man.
we figured it out.
UAD or Waves?
UAD stays. I love UAD.
Yeah.
UAD or Fab Filter?
UAD stays.
Wow.
He's not playing around.
So many more tools.
Yeah.
I love FabFilter, but I mean the UAD palette is
Nasty.
deep.
Yeah.
Super
And then
nasty.
I guess to cap it off, I always love asking this question, but priority for you specifically, workflow or Sonics?
Workflow.
That's my
I feel like
type
that's
of guy
the
right there.
that's like
Nah,
everything.
I've been losing with Sonics lately.
You have. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. That's
Oh,
funny you said the thing about UAD. Like I've used their stuff before, but I've recently, I say within the past year, like going deep into their like plugins and stuff like that. Like as being on this
Yeah.
podcast because we've had a few choice words
yeah,
with their
for you.
interfaces, and then people was like, you don't know what you're talking about. You gotta try it. And I was like, all right, cool. And I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, man.
Like when it comes to their plugins, their compressors. I enjoy okay, so I ask you this. What's your favorite compressor for vocals from UAD? Like right now? Like a go-to compressor for you?
I mean I use my own plugins for vocals now. So
Ooh.
Oh
Talk
wow.
about that.
yeah.
actually.
I have LolComp, which is the craziest plugin on planet Earth.
What is it called?
LolComp.
Low comp.
Yes. So it's an emoji thing. It doesn't look like gear at all.
Right.
And I designed it to basically be the most ridiculous thing that you saw immediately that forced you to make a choice of, am I this kind of person or am I a gear person?
Right.
And, because I figure like a new startup company trying to sell plugins, it's a crowded market. And if you don't do something to cut through the noise, then people are just going to be like, what's that?
Yeah.
And,
Right.
so that was the second plugin that we put out. And it's like all emojis. There's no like knobs are. Well, there's plenty. There's no numbers and stuff on the interface.
Right.
So you have to use your ears.
Yeah.
And just dial it in.
Right.
But I basically made like a cheat code plugin for myself. So it's my 5 most used chains, and I kind of figured out how to model those and put them under the hood. So you can select your chain, and then you can figure out how much you want to push into that chain. And the push of, like, when you turn the dial, there's a lot happening underneath.
Right.
So the throw of the dial will change the sound of the compression significantly. And you adjust the in and out to get the level of compression that you want, just like a LA2A or 1176. And then you have a drop down, which is the LMAO section, which is levitate, which is tilt, mash, which is end limiter, Awaken, which has 2 bands, lavender and haze, which is a mid exciter and a air band. Okay. And I worked on lavender haze along with the other guy in the company, so that was the Easter egg. And then the oxidate, which is reverb. So I basically kind of picked my 5 most usable favorite reverbs and just put them as a more or less. And that's
it. I had no idea you were making plugins.
Oh yeah.
I
gotta
way
get you
behind.
this, dude.
You gotta put me on. Man.
So at the AES show coming up, we reskinned LolComp as All Comp. So for the people who like gear and not crazy shit, now you can have the same exact thing, and you won't be embarrassed to pull it up in front of your clients. Which I never, that was the funniest thing. Like that never occurred to me when I was building it, because I have no problem. Pulled it up in front of Alicia Keys.
Right.
I pulled it up in front of Anushka Sen last night, who's a big Indian actress, and that's me. I've never had a problem being me.
Right.
So if you don't,
little 7-band Pro Tools EQ. Like I'm not embarrassed about that.
What made you take that journey of creating, I guess, your own plugins?
Well, one, I got real tired of all of these processes where, okay, if I want this sound, it's got to be this plugin and that plugin and that plugin and that aux and this, and I found. As well with our other plugin, Greenhouse, which is like a spreader, delay, and saturator. That the vibe was just everything. You have to have things that just are easy to use out of the box. And with LolComp, I wanted to build something that was super powerful for me, but also just dead simple for somebody who doesn't know anything about plugins to start turning shit and figure things out and get great sounds quickly.
Right.
And just with like the top chains, before you touch the LMAO section, the top chain, it's the Smiley chain is vocals, Panda chain is bass instruments, Kangaroo chain is punch chain, like drums, percussion.
Gotcha.
Peacock chain is anything like gentle, pretty.
Okay.
I would put through that. And then the Dragon chain is saturation to destruction, distortion.
You know about this plugin?
He got me. I ain't gonna lie. I know about the plugin, but I didn't try it.
I didn't know about the plugin.
Dude.
This is you are the first person that ever came here. I feel like that's making me go, I've never heard of this plugin. Like for real.
I'm terrible at marketing. I gotta tell you. I'm great at making records, but I'm awful at marketing.
I'll tell you what's gonna happen after this episode. I promise.
He said, hey,
people gonna if you got a trial, is it a trial for it, buddy?
There's a trial. There's a 14-day fully working trial. You can try it, put it through all of its paces.
Right.
You're gonna decide on day one. I promise you're gonna decide on day one.
Right.
Either this is for you or this is not for you. And I'm excited about All Comp because I want other people to experience it that just don't have that mentality.
Right.
Like I get it now. Now we've kind of but the great thing about All Comp is when you put all of those different processes that you got to go from this plugin to that plugin to that plugin, and you put it all under one interface, and you can see all of the controls at one time, your brain processes the creative process totally different. And the results that I get out of LolComp are, I probably have replaced 8 or 10 different plugins, and on any single instance, I'm replacing 2 or 4 plug-in process that I've now modeled under the hood to make things easy.
Right. Wow. What's funny is, and obviously Ryan Schwab is a great friend with Schwab Digital and stuff. I was having a conversation with him. I told him all the time about plugin design and like layout and how things he even was going into a deep dive of like, oh, when I place things here, you know, people were tending to mix like this, or people were using it just with a simple button placed a different place, like created a whole nother workflow. Like for instance, I've recently been using like neutron EQ, like instead of fab filters. I feel like I like the decisions I'm making in neutron as opposed to fab filter. I feel like with fab filter, it's the way, like, for instance, and tell me if I'm crazy, the way I even can pull like a filter, something about it is like, oh, boom, boom, boom. I can just pull and get surgical and do stuff. But Neutron feels a little bit more stiff, where it's like I'm doing broader, like more broader cuts, which I like, as opposed to being surgical and cutting everything out. So with your plugin design, like, would you say that that's probably like the most important thing for you as far as the layout and stuff like that of how a plugin is kind of like set up?
Yeah, I'm a real basic bitch. And I want simplicity.
Right.
Like, I want to turn my technical brain completely off while I'm working.
I hear you.
And just really let the music come in and react to the music and what the music needs. And stop thinking about the tools. So if I have a plugin or an outboard piece that has too many knobs, or shit's hard to see, or it's just not laid out well, I don't gravitate towards it.
Right.
I don't care if it's the most powerful thing, because again, back to the tactile experience of the difference between analog and digital. It's how you get to the end result. And for me, anything that doesn't make you feel really creative, that isn't a tool that you should be using. Unless it speeds up your workflow or that kind of stuff.
And improves that type of stuff.
But any creative tool that if you're struggling to figure out how to use this thing, if you're new and you're figuring out plugins, that's a different thing.
Right.
If you're me, then if I'm struggling to figure out a piece of gear,
it's like I'm good on that.
And I get killed for saying that the look of anything I use means so much to me, because I'm a workflow cat. Like, I'm always gonna put my workflow and speed first. So like there's a lot of ugly plugins out there, man.
I'm not gonna lie to you. There's a lot of plugins that if they just
simplified
or dressed up the GUI,
just intimidating
it would be
to look
better.
at.
Because there's a few plugins that I know that are hideous, but it's like this. It's amazing though.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of one. What plugin do you think is just a terrible GUI, but it sounds amazing though?
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, make DSP.
Wow. That was good. I'm not gonna lie, that was good. I like the soundboard. Some of the only thing about McDSP, I just don't like the names. It's hard to keep up with the names. Like, they be like McDSP 404 2000. That's the only thing that gets wonky
model
to me.
Number.
I can't. And BrainWorks. Oh my god.
BX.
No.
Oh, the names.
The name.
I hate it. Yeah.
So I tried to I recently seen I was seeing Tizio and a few other people using the BX. Look at this. BX Digital V3 EQ.
That's my jam. Love that shit. I've used that since it came out.
Wow.
I'm so late to the party. That EQ is amazing. The way it catches
Well,
resonance.
let me give you some history on the BrainWorks EQ. An AES show ages ago, I see a guy standing in a tiny little booth, kind of off to the side. Nobody's checking his shit out. And I'm just like, let me go see what he's got. So he had this big analog equalizer that is the analog version of that.
Okay.
And then he was modeling the plugin of it. And I was like, what's this? And he starts showing me, and he starts giving me a demo of it. And quickly I realized this is an MS EQ. That was the first MS EQ on the market. The only way, like, mastering engineers were the only people with access to MS processing before this plugin. And that plugin just revolutionized what you could do with the stereo field as far as phase is concerned.
Yeah.
Right. So Dirk was showing me this whole plugin, and I got to know him that day and started using his plugin and really fell in love with it. And then the
rest is history for the most part. That
Whoa.
plugin is incredible. I'm so late.
Well, absolutely.
So long story short, in the plugin mid side, so you got the mono section. You know how I know it's old? Because it says mono section and stereo section. So it doesn't even say mid side, but it says mono and stereo.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with it for just catching resonance and just kind of opening up the sides like on certain instruments, because I love the feature of when I click and hold and it just like automatically solos it. Like literally, and then it bumps it up.
Yeah.
So I can hear it like, and I'm like, sweep it. I love that EQ. I'm so late to that party and I'm so mad about that.
Yeah, one of my phase tricks with that thing is, like, you hear a lot of these mixes and you can tell they just went way too wide with the stereo width. I tend to be fairly conservative with that, but on some mixes, like say I have like a dark keyboard pad that's like my third pad in the mix, and it ain't doing much except for imparting just a little bit of tone or something. And, you know, I'll take something like that and I will pick one frequency band on the side with the BX Digital, and I'll just take that one frequency band and push it way the fuck out. And the listener, it doesn't sound out of phase to the listener because it's only one element in the mix, and it's this kind of, you know, it's a dark pad, so it's not, you know, there's no coherency to it to begin with. And all of a sudden you have this perception of a huge width of your mix, but really the mix is right here except for this one thing that's out here. And you don't run into all of the phase problems of trying to get your mix super wide for no reason.
Is there a certain frequency range like you would suggest, for instance, if it's a dark pad, like what frequency range in the stereo section would you like boost?
Usually like 300 to 600 on something like that. But, you know, sometimes like that 1K pops out really incredibly well. Sometimes I will on a much, like I'll do this with pianos. This is a great trick with BX Digital. If I have a piano and it's just stepping on the lead vocal and I need to hear both of them clearly, I'll dial out the center of the enunciation frequencies of the piano to open up room for the voice, and then I'll emphasize those frequencies on the sides. So it kind of creates this hug for the vocal, and it gives it its space, but it still has its own space.
In the side, I swear to you, because I'm mixing my album, like literally, I haven't slept. That is exactly what I just like discovered with it, where I was like, oh my gosh, I could genuinely like say, get out of the way, but I'll accentuate you on the I kind of just surround it, and the music has been just surrounding it. I'm so
Great
like
lines.
I said, hey, look,
hey man,
hey, I'm keeping that in my thing. I was like, am I crazy? I was like, this feels good, but that's great. Even like boosting 300, 600, I'm very fond of, because I would do it a lot in mastering sometime. Like say for instance, if I'm hearing the music and I hear a piano and I'm like, ooh, I really want that piano kind of to open up on the sides a little bit in mastering, I'll go to like that 500 kind of hertz range to kind of pull it and just try to grab it out a little bit. But now in the mix, I was like, oh, why didn't I just grab it here and just like do stuff? And it feels like it gives me like this warmth to the sides that just makes the whole floor. For instance, the vocal is bright in the center. Now it feels even brighter because there's like this warm, like lushness, like to the side.
On the side.
I can't wait for you to hear it. Actually, that's awesome, though, man. I'm so late to the party.
I love how nerdy this pod is.
Absolutely,
we don't get this space anyway.
Absolutely not.
Smooth.
I do have one.
Smooth like butter. Oh,
I do have one more question. I do like one specific that I have to get off before you go. Go ahead.
I gotta lay it.
Okay.
Smooth like butter. Speaking of smooth like butter, BTS, man.
I didn't work on butter, but I've worked on 48 BTS mixes now.
Wow.
48 released BTS mixes. There's a few
perfect. Wow.
Golly.
Switched my entire mindset on this. So BTS, when I listen to a lot of K-pop, not just BTS, but of course, like NSYNC right now. It feels like a lot of K-pop is super reminiscent on our like the pop music that was super relevant in America from the 2000s to even like the early 2010s. So do you find yourself ever going back to any techniques you used to use when getting their records, or is everything super still like modern?
Man, I feel like I've forgotten more techniques in my lifetime than, you know, because you're just always reinventing yourself and trying to stay fresh and, you know, so much information. But the one time that was super applicable was Once Upon a Time in Shaolin. The Secret Wu-Tang album. So I mixed the entire Secret Wu-Tang double album.
That's right.
All 29 tracks.
Right.
And every member of Wu-Tang, every member of the Killer Bees with a few incredible features.
Are you serious?
Yes, he's very serious. That's that's literally my bombshell question.
one copy in existence. Pleaser Dow in Brooklyn has it now. It's in Brooklyn.
Oh, Pleaser Dow has it?
Pleaser Dow has it in Dumbo.
Are they gonna let the public?
I thought Martin had. Oh no, they
no. It was in a government. Well,
you know, I should call them and see if they'll give me a private listen.
I'm saying,
I haven't heard it since I fucking mixed it. And
oh my god,
it's such a fucking great record.
I was just about to ask you where your laptop was, but all right, seems like
it's not on his laptop. For him to have the Secret Wu-Tang on his would be the most insane NFT
that would
of all
be so
time.
hip hop though.
That would be.
Yeah,
it would be
seriously.
like I got the tape. So you worked on the Secret Wu-Tang album. That was only one
Insane.
copy. It was an art piece. Obviously, a lot of things politically kind of just happened with it. But how did that come about? Like mixing that album. And were you aware that it was going to be that kind of marketing for it?
No, I didn't know. And originally, they came to me. And they asked me to sign an NDA, and I'm like, I'm not signing an NDA, and before I know what the fuck I'm getting into. So I'm like, and I told him, I'm like, Kanye West doesn't have me sign an NDA. If he can trust me, you can too. What do you got? And they're like, all right, this is what we're doing. And I was like, you're doing what? I almost passed on what? Oh my God.
Right.
So yeah, it was like, I didn't even tell my manager until the announcement came out that they had put it out, and like every news outlet in the world was running stories on it. My manager calls me, he's like, bro, have you heard of this fucking Wu-Tang album? And I'm like, I got to tell you something I couldn't tell you before.
Yo, bro.
Wow.
That's me. It's me. It's Ken Lewis. Wow. So you mixed that entire project.
You've heard
it. You're one of the very few people.
I've heard it more than probably most. Maybe there's 2 or 4 other people on earth that have heard it more than me.
Right. Oh, yeah, you mixed it. You know how it is when you mixed it. Like,
all those songs,
So who had the best verse on this album?
Wow. Who had the best verse?
But back to your question, that album was, I had to go back to my original skill sets of New York boom bap hip hop in the 90s. That was the sound of that album. That was what they wanted to go for. That was why they called me. Yeah. So, and it's Wu-Tang Clan. So the toughest thing about mixing Once Upon a Time in Shaolin was not being such an engineer. Yeah. Like everything that you did to make things sound better made the vibe not better.
Yeah.
Right.
So the real challenge was to keep Wu-Tang sounding like Wu-Tang. Because man, let me tell you, you can fuck that shit up very quickly. I'm sure. And it just polishes up and you're like, this doesn't feel right. What is? So I had to really kind of, and this is from me, who I already think I don't polish shit up. So I'm like, so I'm listening to this and I just felt like the hardest thing about that was making the choices to do less. Yeah. And to let them be them, and just to make sure that everything is audible and raw and rugged,
translating
New
the right
York
way.
hip hop. And
wow, I'm really happy to hear that, because the one thing I took away, I was in college for like a few months, but the one thing I took away from that was just sonics from that time. 93 West Coast was really the bright sounding with Dre and Quick and all
cleaner.
of them.
Hip hop got clean.
But New York was so dirty still.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
was,
up until maybe Bad Boy era.
Yeah.
But wow. That's really nice
for sure.
Yeah, I got to New York City in May 1993.
Wow.
So I was like right in the New York boom bap era.
Yeah.
You were in the
Right in the
prime,
epicenter.
like prime.
I think I must have worked with every fucking rapper on the East Coast and most of the West Coast people.
Right. You were with Pete Rock too.
I recorded the whole Soul Survivor album.
Wow.
Pete Rock Soul Survivor. I was the recording engineer on that whole album, and I mixed one of the songs. Wow. And working with Pete was,
I could imagine,
legendary.
especially if you came here tonight, like during that time.
Yeah.
Like and that was like a comeback kind of like project.
That was like 97, 98.
Right.
I think we were mostly doing it around 97. I think it came out in 98.
Wow.
And that was the features he had on that were just
Everybody wanted to
crazy.
work with, of course. Like I can imagine.
And I mean, there's no way we would probably get killed for not speaking about this.
What?
Well, now they don't pay attention to audio shit, but
What?
on behalf of the Swifties, and I'm not a Swiftie,
I know where you're going.
all of that Taylor Swift stuff. Especially with, have you done any of the Recreation albums at all?
No.
Got you. So
Band,
it's
she
been more
should have
for
tapped
new
me in
stuff.
for that shit.
Oh
Man, you would have been right.
That was my wheelhouse.
No brainer. I was like, that's a duo.
Should I have been more aggressive here? Should I have reached out to them?
Yeah, seriously, I feel you. But just working with her, and I know she's super closed off, especially in this new era of all of these projects. But and with Jack Antonoff again.
Yeah,
Shit,
with Jack.
how is the Taylor Swift stuff?
I've never met Taylor. I work for Jack Antonoff.
Yeah.
So Jack taps me in when he needs, my special set of skills for whatever he needs. It's, whenever Jack calls, it doesn't matter. The answer is yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, in typical fashion, I didn't know that I was working for a Taylor project, but you have a pretty good idea that it might be, or at least it's going to be a hit record. So
It's something special.
And but going back to fun, that's how my relationship with Jack started. Jack was the guitar player for Fun.
Yeah.
And now he's biggest producer in the world. Won the Grammy for production last
So I
year.
think twice in a
Congrats,
row,
Jack.
actually.
Yeah.
And I got to give a shout out to his engineer Laura Sisk. What a career she's building. You should, if you haven't had her on your show, that should be an invite.
I will definitely investigate.
Man.
I love when people put me on to those people because then I genuinely go follow them and just start like deep diving into their stuff too. So I definitely will.
Yeah.
What's her name again?
Laura Sisk.
Laura Sisk.
Shout
Yeah,
out to
she's
Laura
Jack's tracking engineer. I'm and project coordinator. I mean, she's fantastic. And you hear those records, and they're just so immaculately captured. But yeah, I feel like women in the industry are killing it right now.
It's happening
Absolutely.
slowly but surely, and obviously we got some work to do. To be honest with you, there's a few women that we've been just talking to just behind closed door. Like we need. Unfortunately, a lot of them I haven't had in New York.
Yeah.
But if they ever, ladies, if you ever,
Ann Mancelli, you should have Ann Mancelli on.
okay.
Jungle City.
Word.
Oh, that's
Ann Mancelli is
yeah.
Alicia Keys' right on.
Yeah.
Ann is
Is she-
brilliant.
she's
Ann and I came up together. That's freshman class right there.
Oh,
Wow,
Yeah.
really?
Wow.
She's in
I
New
haven't.
York?
I've never met her.
Oh,
Jungle
she's-
City. I remember when it first
I know
started Jungle City
yeah.
back in the day.
But
Like
I didn't know she was in New York.
Yeah.
me either.
Wowzers.
I didn't know she was still here.
Yeah.
I just assume everybody.
Yeah,
Of course.
LA.
LA.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
that. Wow, she's here.
She's
Man,
Yeah, she owns Jungle City.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
fucking best studio in the city.
Oh yeah.
And we mixed the Hell's Kitchen cast album. Well, I mixed some of it at my place back in Cincinnati, and then
He said yeah.
I felt the same way.
Nah, but at the crib is
I
crazy.
kid you not, because I just saw it with
Oh, you saw it?
bro? It's
I haven't
amazing.
seen it yet.
Bro, it's amazing. They just swept at the Tonys. Shout out Alicia Keys. Shout out Joanne
Yeah.
Moon.
That's
Shout out
crazy, man.
Yeah, that was they had me. So I did the Girl on Fire drums. That's how I met Alicia. And then they had me mix her single on her Christmas album a couple years ago, December back to June. And Alicia really loved the way I mixed her vocals. So then I got called to mix Kaleidoscope, which was the single on Hell's Kitchen.
Wow,
So I mixed Kaleidoscope. And then I get called to help with the cast album. So, but it's like last minute. And so basically they flew me in and everybody shacked up at Jungle City. And it was like 2 or 3 days of intense, finished the record mixing and we got all the last songs done. But the geekiest part for me was I can't remember how many songs, but one of the songs I mixed on the album was Empire State of Mind for Broadway. And I mean, to be able to mix
what was that like?
any version of Empire State of Mind, oh
Crazy.
my God,
Crazy.
that was because you can't walk through New York City without hearing that song. It's
Oh my God.
so
National
legendary.
It became. I think it was like Bloom. I think it was
Was?
Bloomberg's
They got
time. I think Bloomberg was on me at that
I
time.
think so.
yeah.
It became like the song of the city. It was the song,
still
like
is.
official.
It still
It
is,
is,
yeah.
man.
It's
Like
so
we
the
can't
song of
escape
the
Concrete
city.
Jungle. Come on, bro.
Shout out to Ron
Well,
Bros.
one thing I want to ask you is, obviously, I think at the time of this video, you have your event coming up with AES.
Yes.
And it's from your mixing night. By the way, what's your channel and everything? Because you do this the first Wednesday of every month.
It's usually the first Wednesday of every month. So we started Mixing Night. It's YouTube/Mixing Night. And it's basically a 2-hour variety show. It's like a studio variety show. So, I'm showing my techniques and I'm mixing and I'm having interviews and I'll show different plugins. And it's just like my give back to the music industry. So usually Mixing Night is the first Wednesday of every month, but this year we pushed it back to October 9th so that we could broadcast live from New York City.
Yeah.
We are broadcasting from the Cutting Room Studios in Midtown, legendary studio.
That's what's up.
And we're going to have a little party, and I would love for you guys to come.
We are
Please
there.
join us for
We're
the
there, man.
broadcast. It's
For
going to be
sure.
crazy. So the live stream actually starts 8 p.m. So it's 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. YouTube.com/Mixing Night. We've been going for 4.5 years. We started during the pandemic, right after lockdown started, and we're still going strong.
Right.
And we started Mixing Night to kind of foster community within the music industry. And the thing as the pandemic waned, it became the thing that we didn't realize we couldn't live without.
Right.
You know, we had just built this amazing conglomeration of people that tune in and check it out and collaborate across oceans. And, you know, and I've just heard so many times the impact of that show.
Right.
And you're like, well, can't give that up.
Right.
Got to make it better. So,
Right.
so we're constantly leveling up the show. When we moved to Cincinnati, I built a couple new rooms, and now we broadcast from Studio A. And if you haven't seen the show, basically my studio is like a real life Apple Vision Pro. So I have a triple projection system in my studio, and I have a 40-foot wrap around me of acoustic projection fabric.
Wow.
So the sound passes right through it and goes right into the fabric wall behind it. And I have a very treated room. But I have, so basically from right outside my peripheral vision all the way around, floor to ceiling, is I can project whatever I want.
Yeah.
And I can put myself in any environment in the universe that I want to.
Right.
But the magic part of it to me, so, and I've found that's hugely influential in your workflow, in your results, in, you know, if you got to be in one room most of your fucking life, man, make that the best room you can possibly make it.
That's very true.
But for me, one of the things that I love to do most is vocal production. And one of the catalysts to envision why to do this was, so now I cut vocals. I've always cut vocals in the control room with headphones on ever since I figured I could do that. And but now I put, so it's kind of like a soft wrap around me. So I put the vocalist in the soft corner facing the wall, and I project the lyrics right in front of them on the wall, and I project whatever else around them inspires them for that performance.
Right. Wow.
And it's just, you know, they have the safety net of the lyrics right there, so they're not trying to hold their phone or their whatever. And it's always right there in front of them. And then everything else, they are just immersed in, you know, inspiration. And one of the hardest things about getting a great performance out of any artist is getting them in that zone of feeling like they're safe and protected and they can be the biggest version of themselves. And if they make a mistake, nobody heard that. It's never going to get heard by the public. And, you know, and just have the most freedom to create and be the most open. And that's how you get the best performances out of people. And like, people don't really understand, you know, you learn the DAW and you learn the gear and you learn, you know, beat making and everything, but bringing vocals out of a singer is psychology. It is absolute 100% psychology.
Straight up.
And it's every single thing that I do surrounds putting the vocalist in a comfort zone and making them feel as, I guess, just like open and creative and able to go for things without the risk of judgment. That's, you'd be like, that's the thing you never realize. You know, you might have a big artist who's been in the studio 100 times with big people, and they're still worried about being judged by the people that are working with them. And you don't know that as you know, you can't read that on their face sometimes. So, you know, for me, it's always about trying to read the room and see, okay, what does this artist need? And what does this song need? And what approach do I need to take for this? But it's also just making sure that the artist knows that this is a safe space.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah, setting the mood is important. I'm in a closed room, but I have so many lights around me that I press a button and it changes because I know this room. Like when I built my room, I was like, I'm gonna be here for a while. So I was like, I'm gonna make it nice. I'm making it enjoyable. I literally sometimes can sit in my room and just watch a movie. Like I can switch modes like quick, and I think that's really important. Like aesthetic is important. I'm with you on that because me and him go back and forth.
It kind of started with Hue lights in my Jersey studio before we moved, and you know, we just had a shit ton of Hue lights, and it helped set the vibe and the mood of the work. And then you know, I just kind of ramped that up to. One of the craziest things I ever saw was I was riding with Toby Gadd one day in LA, and he has this house in the Hollywood Hills, and the house is a studio. It's not his house. It's just for studio.
Oh wow!
And it's floor to ceiling window, and it's about a 30-foot long, maybe 40 feet long, and it just looks over the valley.
Wow!
And it's the most exceptional studio view you've ever seen in your entire life. So we go to cut vocals. And, you know, Toby's desk is looking out. We go to cut vocals, and he has the vocal mic set up to the left next to his fireplace with the tapestry next to the fireplace. He presses a button, and the screen drops down with the lyrics right in front of the vocalist. And the vocalist's view is the valley. And I just looked at this, and I was like, this dude is so next level. Holy shit.
You want to sing.
And it was, the other thing that Toby Gad did that was crazy was he hits a button on his desk at one point, and the whole desk lifts up. And this is long before lift desks.
Right.
And I was just like, and he went from sitting and working to standing and working.
Right.
And it was just, you could tell he was in his zone and in his vibe, and everything he did was to create vibe.
Right.
And I saw that, and I was just like, okay.
He said, yeah.
You went back home and said,
Okay.
it's time to move this desk in my hue lights. It's time to get it. But you know, Ken, one thing I want to say is, I want to say shout out to Baines. Because Baines is the one that connected us.
Absolutely.
And I think it was in the DM, right? He just connected us a long time ago. He was like, you need to meet each other.
He said that.
He was like, I need to Ken Lewis. He was like, you need to meet Ken Lewis. And I was like, all right, bet, like connect us. And he definitely did. And I'm so glad.
Thank you, Baines.
He did.
Appreciate
Thank you, Baines.
it.
So shout out to Baines.
Shout out to Baines.
Shout out to I Got Baines. And you know, one time, you know, Ken, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for your time, guys.
No, of
really
course.
appreciate you.
I wanted to make
was
this happen.
amazing.
As soon as you hit me and was, I'm in New York, we always trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that we made this happen. And then obviously the AES event. I'll make sure I put a link in the description with all the links and stuff like that as far as everything. Sure. And is there anything else you want to like shout out or like working on that you want the people to know about? Definitely mixing night, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, Mixing Night, October 9th, live from New York City. We live stream 8 to 10 p.m. on YouTube. It's free. Right. And I give out all my tricks and skills and everything. I don't hold anything back.
Right.
But the other thing is Grammy season is coming up.
Yes, sir.
And we got the Taj Farron album that we're lobbying for a Best Contemporary Blues Album Grammy.
You got my vote, then.
Okay.
So
Yeah, he's
if
gonna
you're
go-
out there on the Grammy committee or if you're a Grammy voter,
Right.
Taj Farron, Best Contemporary Blues Album, Chapter 1.
Say that. Tell your friends because he's
And
on.
honestly, I think we made it. So
Cool.
you
I
know.
love that.
Awesome.
It's
That's
awesome.
great.
Yeah,
Is it time? And when that's coming around, when is that nomination? I love when the
couple
when
weeks.
the
a couple
considerations come out. I love that. Like I just like that process like so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, like thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
man. If I
Ken,
had
for
a-
everything, man. Seriously, like thank you.
Thank you.
If I had a shot for every time I was surprised today, I would have
Yo.
alcohol poisoning.
Facts,
Yeah, I'm about to
exactly.
say,
Heck
It'd be
yeah.
bad. Thank
right.
you so much. And
it's really
man.
been
And what's your
pleasure.
Instagram, Ken?
Instagram is Ken Lewis Producer.
At Ken Lewis Producer. Well, I'll make sure I put a link in the description below and stuff like that. But
Yeah, you've been tuned in to
KenLewis.com is
my
my website. All my credits are there.
guys,
and
Nice.
the
Yeah,
plugin.
cool.
Where can
Oh,
we
and
The
plugin.
plugin is
Yes.
mixingnightaudio.com.
Mixing Night Audio.
Mixingnightaudio.com. LolComp is the main plugin. AllComp is the reskin of that for gearheads. And we also have Greenhouse, which is a saturator spreader vibe box. And then our next plugin we're going to put out hopefully by the end of the year, which is going to be a delay. And I think we're going to call it Candelay, like Candy Lay.
wow.
And so another interface from us.
Okay, he said another good old interface from Mixing Night Audio.
And but you know, I started researching all of the other delays, and our initial mission was build the easiest to use delay for people who don't know how to use delay, but make it powerful enough for pros. Is our company motto. Basically.
Right.
And so I looked at like 30 or 40 other plugin interfaces, and I didn't think a single company got it perfect.
Right.
And so I think at least perfect as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Our interface is going to be super simple to use, super musical, super like you won't have to know how to use delay to get it to sound good quickly.
Gotcha.
And I think that's the how I always, because I turn my technical brain off when I work. So I don't want to be thinking about the gear. I want to be thinking about the result.
Right.
And so, just playing for a while with this stuff, you can get the most fantastic results on LolComp so quickly. And the unexpected thing about AllComp is when you put all of those different functionalities under one hood, you get completely different and better results than you ever got with those other series of plugins that you used to have to string together.
Right, understood. Okay.
And yeah, it's really, and that's a workflow thing.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
totally a workflow
Absolutely,
thing.
yeah.
So when we saw that and we were designing the delay, we were like, workflow is everything.
Right.
So we
I
gotta,
promise
you
you,
know.
the 14-day free trials that are gonna fly off of that mixingnightaudio.com website.
Check it out, people.
You'll see.
You're gonna love it.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So this has been the My Audio Nerds podcast for audio nerds like yourself. Please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Remember, one lucky person in the comment section, leave a great comment, leave your @name for Instagram, and you'll win that VIP Gold Edition Rosetta EQ or compressor. Also, you can become a paid member of the channel. But for instance, everyone already saw this. That is a member. They been saw this. They already went to mixingnightaudio.com. Already got the log comp. They're 7 days ahead of you. You're a mess.
And if you are behind the paywall, like we might have some info where you could slide on us during AES, but that's another conversation.
Maybe
No,
we'll talk.
I mean, we might just say, "Oh, we'll be here for this time," because we weren't there the whole time. But
yeah, but we're
Shout
gonna
out
go.
to our members.
Yeah,
We'll see you soon.
for sure. This has been the My Audio Nerds podcast. Until next time, y'all.
Yes, sir.
Peace.